A lot of it has to deal with my own story, running away from home at 13, um, being out in the streets, being incarcerated at 22, and then serving the sentence from 22 to 38. The counseling piece allows you the opportunity to decompress from everything you went through. And prison for me was a traumatic experience. You know, wasn't nothing normal about prison. You know, we normalized it. The realities of your reentry is you came up with the game plan to survive an abnormal environment. So Ready for me was really assessing my team that could help me carry out goals, the goals I wanted to get accomplished, and then also realistically putting my goals on a timeline.
Hi there, my name is Teresa Hodge. I'm the president and CEO of Mission Launch, and we are here today for Come Home Ready. I have one of my new best friends, Khalil Rashadan. I call him Mr. Arizona, so happy to have you here.
And I am very appreciative to be here today, Mr. Arizona. I'm part of a village of a lot of Mr. and Mrs. Arizona, so I mean, it's an honor to be here, and thank you.
Well, we're excited to be here. This is the first time that our organization has done a hackathon so far away from home, and we're so appreciative to be well received in this community and to become part of this village. When we started this work, everyone kept saying, have you talked to Khalil? Have you talked to Khalil? And by the third or fourth time I heard your name, I said, can somebody please introduce me to Khalil? So, just such an honor, because when you enter a new space, you don't go in to take over. You come in to learn, to listen. And in our case, our hackathons are just holding space for a conversation that it sounds like you've been having and so many others are having in this space. But it's how can we elevate, the issues, the concerns that are not only taking place here in Arizona, but all across the country. And so really, want to dig into that. But before we do, we'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Khalil Rashadan. I'm someone directly impacted by incarceration. I served 15 and a half years of a life sentence prior to my case being overturned due to prosecutorial misconduct and vindictiveness. From the front end of criminal justice reform to the back end of reentry, I've engaged it at one point. But a lot of it has to deal with my own story, running away from home at 13, being out in the streets, being incarcerated at 22, and then serving the sentence from 22 to 38. And so there was a lack of programming at the time inside of prison, and had a number of associates who needed help. So upon my release at 38, I decided to get the hell out of Arizona and just be free. At the time, I was out truck driving. I was getting calls from a number of associates who were still incarcerated here, from housing issues to healthcare. Some folks were getting out and needed assistance for a number of different issues, employment. And that happened, or that was going on for about a year and a half. And it made me realize while I was out truck driving, because while you're driving across this country, as therapeutic as it was, I was making good money, seeing the country. The reality of it was, it's like, it gave me a lot of time to think. And I kind of tell the story and let people know it's like my cell on wheels, because that's what I called it. I was alone. It was my cell on wheels, gave me time to think. And so I made a drastic decision to stop truck driving and come back and get on the ground here in Arizona. So,
which is funny, because you said your goal was to get the hell out of Arizona, as I quote.
Yeah. And to come back into the belly of the beast, and it was triggering, but I felt I can help more and do greater things back here on the ground, instead of just, helping folks from that distance.
Right.
A lot of what I seen at the time, I got good response with helping people, because it was more me walking people through things, having a physical presence. And in some of the instances, I seen folks who already had solutions, but they needed help planning to implement. So I needed to be there to walk them through, or just have a physical presence, and they would implement. And it was just a quiet assurance that everything was going to be all right, you know.
Yeah.
And so, went from there, case manager with with Sage Counseling, and they had a contract with the Department of Corrections to facilitate the 90-day transitional program. And that gave me a bigger opportunity to mentor thousands of people over the years, my time at Sage. And then as a case manager, once again, I get to thinking like, wait a minute, I'm just treating symptoms. Policies need to change. And so I took a position at the ACLU, their campaign for smart justice here in Arizona, and looked at some front end policy changes. And I stayed there for about 5 years doing that. Went over to organization to help people restore their rights. And, now I'm just looking at the policy pieces as getting to the core of these issues that needs to be changed. And so.
But let me stop you for a second, because your time, you went into prison at what age?
I went into prison at 22.
And you came home?
At 38. And
when you were, now I'm going to make you tell your age because people can do the math, right? So what year did you come home?
So I was released December 20th, 2011.
So not that long ago.
Absolutely.
Because I'm listening to all of the things that you've done since then. Where did you get all of that project management skill set from? Project management
probably came from moms. All those skills and really, my mom told me when I came home, and I want to say this real quick, kind of taking a step back. So I had to apologize to my mom because she raised me better than what I displayed. And, I was fortunate to have that opportunity before she passed away 8 months after I was released. And with her passing, or prior to her passing, I had made that commitment, because she said, you were always smart, but you use your talents for BS. And so that rings in my head every morning I wake up. What could I use my knowledge to change today? And so, now when you're looking at my release and the influence on different policies that I've been engaged in, a lot of that stems from my mother. And so the transition, when I was released at 38, I'm coming up on year 50, and I'm still healing myself. So being someone directly impacted, I don't get to clock out. I don't get to change my skin color. I'm engaged in the work in the community on a regular, and it's just amazing I'm blessed and lucky. And the blessing piece comes from surviving that 15 and a half years in inhumane treatment and conditions inside of our prisons. And then the lucky piece is just being able to adapt in a new world that's full of technology. So, that's like getting in a time machine going, 15 and a half years in the future and just being released. So.
Was there technology inside of the prison when you were there?
At the time, the only technology you had was your TVs, and you'd be lucky to get all or get clear cable channels. And so there was no technology at the time. We were asking for it.
Can you imagine today, doing your time with the tablets? Do you feel like that would make a difference?
Well, the tablets are a big help. They can be, programs can be downloaded onto the tablets, communications, because now you can have real-time communications by email with your family. So it opens up, more communication, opens up more opportunities. But and there's endless possibilities, because, when you talk about the opportunity to have vocational trainings or partner up with the university, which I mentioned to ASU the other week about certifications, vocational certs that that the university can customize.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it as being a great opportunity for folks to be able to utilize the tablets and stay connected or more connected with the outside world.
Yeah. Oh, when we first talked, you made a statement, and I think I probably have said this statement every day, at least once a day. And for me, I always say that we have a problem called mass incarceration, and yet reentry is hyperlocal. And so the solutions of reentry, it's good to have national programs.
Absolutely.
But so often what you need to connect to is in your zip code, maybe in Arizona and 2 major cities, that you've got to really kind of get closer to the 2 major cities. But do you agree or disagree with the fact that reentry is local?
Absolutely. Reentry is local because most of the folks, that's where your community's at, and I always tell people, first off, we need to have a transitional bridge, and that transitional bridge is where you have real-time information going to that person who's incarcerated. So when they're putting together their transitional plans, they can implement it in real time. So now that person walks out the gate and the community is there to assist them, walk them through or help them out, help them out or walk them through implementing that transitional plan. Plus, the biggest part of that implementation is trust. And I say this all the time because most people will put together a good plan. And some people have good plans at the wrong time. Some people have the wrong plans at the right time. And so it does take that community. And then the other thing with transition is for folks incarcerated, and I can speak on myself and the number of folks I'm mentoring, we dislike change. We like to develop a routine and follow through, stick through it. And so that change, if they're going back to, Phoenix, in a certain part of Phoenix, we really want to lay a foundation and get established there. And we hate to uproot and have to move or change that, especially when we're gaining momentum. And so, the biggest piece of that too is stability. Most folks, there's anxiety already coming out. You go to a new environment, which I always talk about, environments or associates are fastest ways for a person to relapse or for a person to, go back to prison. And then they're looking at or trying to measure recidivism. And so are you really looking at the environment and the associates? I mean, the mentoring piece it goes back to walking, having a presence and walking folks through things. And like I said, there's guys that come out super sharp, who have good plans, and they just need to know it's okay. They need that reassurance. Or if I can help them move a mountain, bring some of that anxiety down. And I always give a sports analogy. I know you can make your free throws, but in clutch time, I need you to bring your anxiety down. The game is on the line, you're a top performer. And so it's the same thing. Superstar guys get I get a good response just having the presence. And even if I'm not there, they can call me and I'll pick up my phone. So most of my time is actually mentoring people who are going through some things or making that transition, and just saying, hey, calm down, it's going to be all right.
So you've continued the case management part of your work,
Unofficially.
Yeah, sometimes you call it case management, sometimes you call it mentoring.
Right.
But how important is it for directly impacted people to mentor, serve as a guide, to coach, whatever we want to call it, other people who are currently incarcerated and those who are transitioning?
The balance from clinical, because most of your programs are around clinical. That's where a lot of the funding comes from. But a lot of guys might not, at the core, accept or embrace the clinical setting or even implement. And the peer part, it really allows the person to, we humanize the experience. We humanize in the individual and folks even engaged on the clinical side. So I mean, I got the best of both worlds. So I understand the clinical part, and then I can break it down where it's digestible for the guys I'm mentoring and their folks in the community. And so it is highly important to have peers present, because there's a trust established, and it goes back to what I said earlier, the trust of implementing and knowing everything is going to be cool. And so there's a number of times where some of my guys went to their counseling sessions, and just at the mention of counseling, they're like, I'm not crazy. And I'm telling them, well, counseling doesn't mean you're crazy. The counseling piece allows you the opportunity to decompress from everything you went through. And prison for me was a traumatic experience. You know, wasn't nothing normal about prison. You know, we normalized it. And so now we come up with that word, and I'm talking to my group, and I'm saying, everybody, you've heard of that word, institutionalized. And they say, yeah. Well, it's always, you know, when I heard it the first time, I was like, well, I'm not dysfunctional. I got the question. I'm not institutionalized. And then as I started to develop a better understanding, I'm like, oh yeah, I was institutionalized.
12 years later, I find myself still saving silly things.
Right.
You know, like in prison, if you got one of those, you know, if you think of a loaf of bread and it had the little twisty on it.
Absolutely.
That little twisty is invaluable, you know, a stick pin. And every now and then I find myself still holding on to something. And I have to, you know, I have to stop myself in that moment and say, you can get this again.
Absolutely.
You can let this go.
You can let it go.
You know, but people save and collect all kinds of little things out of fear that you can never get it again.
Right. Well, and so some of the things that I was talking to my guys about was the realities of reentry. And so I had all these plans in place. And so now I'm looking at, like, once I got out, nothing lines up 100% where you lay your head. And so there's a list of priorities that you want to get accomplished. 1, safe housing, you want to lay your head. 2, how am I going to support myself, whether it's a job, whether you have money. And when number 1 and 2 doesn't line up for me, I immediately, instead of me panicking, I said, let me take a step back. And the number 3 on my list was like, okay, what type of food I want to eat? All those cravings. And so food is a pick me up. And so I'm talking to my guys and I'm like, well, what was yours? And they're like, well, I went to Jack in the Box. We got X, Y, and Z. And so now I run through the realities. First time going into a restaurant, and in that restaurant, people stop, they look at you, you look back at them. And the first thing in my mind was like, do they know I just got out of prison? My ID on my chest, do I still got prison clothes on? And people just watching doors. You know, first time to a supermarket, my 30-minute trip to the store turned into 2 hours trying to narrow down choices. You know, and then the third thing in that store was bubbles. You know, in prison, you got bubbles. Out here, nobody care about your bubbles.
What do you mean by bubbles?
So, you know, you have a buffer. And so, you know, only certain people in prison can sit on your bed, roll cigarettes, make a cup of coffee. And out here, you know, you have these bubbles for peace of mind and safety in prison, but nobody care about your bubbles, because I'm in line and there's someone standing right behind me breathing on the back of my neck. Every time I step up, they step up. And I'm like, okay, this is very uncomfortable. And so most of my guys talked about walking out the store, putting their back against the wall, smoking a cigarette to calm down. But while they're out there, some of them scanned the parking lot for I call it G license plate, government license plates. They heard keys dangling was triggered. And then, you know, this is where I'm talking about the word institutionalized and the need to decompress. And so the biggest part of all of this is my youngsters, where they say, well, we come from an era where we say we keep it real or 100. My youngsters say we keep it 1,000 wow now. I'm like,
1,000 wow? Okay, I'm
That's,
old.
hey, that's what I said, 1,000 wow. Okay, come on, get in the car with it. So I say, now I have to say from 100 to 1,000 wow. Keep it real with yourself first. And so we start assessing triggers that they're going through, even going home and taking showers with their shower shoes still on, or, having to carry their stuff to the shower, or, you got 4,000 rolls of toilet tissue in the hall closet at home, but you still take a roll and take it into the room with you. The need to overcompensate because you don't want to feel like a burden on your family. So you get up early in the morning, you're overcompensating, you're washing dishes, cooking, cleaning, doing the kids' homework, walking the dogs before anybody else in the house even wakes up. And even though they told you the night before, nah, we got this, you still overcompensate, because you don't want to feel like a burden. And so most folks find themselves, the sun going down in the backyard, because that's their new small prison yard. And they'll light a cigarette and watch the sun go down, and two things that come to mind. One, the air breathes different out here. You're picking up on perfumes, colognes, fruit, vegetables, barbecue on the grill 10 miles away. And then the other thing is that there's a world after 8 o'clock, because most of them are accustomed to locking themselves down. And so they will go in at 8 o'clock and remember that they don't have to do that no more. And so these are conversations around that word institutionalized. And there's a number of different things. And some folks say, I get it. Mm-hmm. And so I tell them that word to me. I finally realized that I came up with the game plan to survive an abnormal environment called prison. And it doesn't matter if you're in a dormitory setting with 200 other people and you're trying to have some privacy on the toilet, and somebody's talking about some Tom Brady fantasy football points. Mm-hmm. That's not a normal situation. Mm-hmm. Or you're in a 2-person cell that's not bigger than some people's closet. Mm-hmm. The realities of your reentry is you came up with the game plan to survive an abnormal environment. The purpose of the counseling is to decompress. And this is where I have to let them know it becomes a problem when you don't know what switches to turn on and turn off.
I like this. I like this because for those of us who have gone in and out of prison, the thought that somebody would label us institutionalized, we would reject it.
Absolutely.
But you have allowed us to have power over that
Absolutely.
word, right? And to own it, to redefine it. And then also, I like the holistic healing you have around it. So we're here on Come Home Ready. And ready means something different for everyone. What does ready mean for you?
So ready means, what it means for me is actually, preparing mentally to take that journey and bringing the anxiety down. So, I want a proactive agenda. I want to do outreach, and so the village or who's in your 5, sometimes you have to think outside the box, and the people that I wanted there was not the people I didn't expect to be there. They were the ones who were there. So ready for me was really assessing my team that could help me carry out goals, the goals I wanted to get accomplished, and then also realistically putting my goals on a timeline. And so that allowed me to start measuring, am I on track to get this goal accomplished? And so some folks, I did that while I was in prison. And like I said, a lot of it didn't line up, but it let me know I was going to be all right because I knew I had the right plan at the right time. Mm-hmm. I just needed to recruit folks to help me implement it.
Wonderful. What was the first meal you had when you left prison?
Ooh, my first meal, because I'm pescatarian, fish and vegetables. So I had a fish fry and, my greens and cabbage and the whole nine. So, we steam everything and that was my first meal. So
wonderful. What we all know is none of us were served the best meals in prison. And for a lot of us, it was, what was the first thing we ate? And most of us remember that first meal.
Absolutely. Now, don't get me wrong. I was making some of my prison meals, my tamales, and I was like, okay, now that I got access to real cheese, things like that, and onions and bell peppers. And so I tried some of those recipes out here. They turned out really good. But
Well, we said we were going to have a whole show on prison cooking, for the record, because
oh
everybody
man,
has their own stories
oh yeah,
about crushing up potato chips or Doritos or some kind of craziness and throwing all
yeah,
kind of crazy concoction.
yep,
So we'll have to have a cook-off one day. We'll let you come back for us to do that. But
absolutely.
can you take maybe like 20, 30 seconds and talk into the camera and speak to a person who's sitting on their bunk today
Okay.
and they're looking for hope and they want to know how they can come home and be a version of Khalil?
And so the reality of hope, and if you're sitting there and you're going to be transitioning out, even if you're not, just know that there is a bigger movement out here. There's more awareness. There's family members advocating for change. There's direct service providers, and there's a number of resources. So, preparation to embrace is really building up that trust. I know it's harder to trust because historically, especially while I was there, I know a lot of times people dumped on us. And now, we have myself and whole village of other folks throughout the state who's looking to change that. So, preparation, build that trust up, do your outreach prior to, coming home, and have that game plan with the team ready to implement it. So with the team that, can help you implement it. That's my hope.
And if there was one word when you think of come home ready, come home, what would be your one word?
Let me see here. Village. It's going to take a village to raise a child. It's going to take that same village to assist folks upon reentry. So think about your village.
Well, that was more than one word. And what that means is it takes a lot to come home.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have to
Village.
rely on the village. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited because today I feel like, you're like I said, you're one of my new best friends in Arizona. I'm going to become a part of your village. I'm so excited.
Absolutely.
Because what I know is that you'll be a part of mine. We already share some of the same friends. So really excited about the opportunity to work with you on this work and working to improve the lives for men and women who are incarcerated.
Thank you. Thank you.